do have a timeout. Decide not to use it. Curry, way downtown. Bang! Bang! Oh, what a shot from Curry!
The Minnesota Timberwolves have their 2 stars, but not much else. And after giving up next year's first-round pick in a trade for DAngelo Russell, they are firmly in win-now mode. And on top of that, they have the first overall pick in this year's draft, which makes them one of the most interesting teams this offseason. What's up, everybody? My name is Ethan. This is Courtside TV. Today we're talking about the Minnesota Timberwolves. If you're new, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Karl-Anthony Towns is one of the best big men in the league, and after signing a massive contract extension with Minnesota, it figures that he will be here at least for the next couple of years, assuming that things don't go extremely south and he asks for a trade. That extension, he's got 4 years left on it at around $30+ million a year, and he is only 24, I believe, turning 25 just in a couple of days. But this is a guy who clearly is deserving of max money, and he is going to be a perennial all-star type of guy. Didn't make the all-star team last year because of a combination of injuries, and the team wasn't very good, and it's some tough competition in the West to make that all-star spot. But he is definitely, one of those perennial all-star type guys, a top 2 or 3 center in the entire league. And so this is a guy who I definitely have belief in long term. He's going to be around for the long haul, hopefully for Minnesota, and if not, they could surely get a big return back for him in a trade at some point down the line. I don't anticipate that happening because of the fact that they have brought in DAngelo Russell as his backcourt partner, not a backcourt partner, sorry, but offensive partner, and a guy who he's been friends with and wanted to play with for a while now, and so surely that will help please him, and he'll be able to be happy with the franchise with his buddy D'Lo there. Now, we haven't seen that pairing in action very much. They only played 1 game together, I believe, after D'Lo was acquired, and then Cat had some nagging injuries happen, and so he was shut down for a couple weeks, and then the season was suspended shortly after. They didn't go to the bubble, so we haven't really seen that pairing together, but it stands to reason that it should work pretty well. It'll be a nice pick and roll duo. They can, do pick and pop. Both of them can shoot and play off ball, and I think that'll work relatively well. Neither of them are, have proven to be much of winning players so far in their career in the NBA. They might need a guy to come in and really teach them the ropes of how to actually win playoff basketball, and that guy was supposed to be Jimmy Butler, but we know what happened there. So I do think that they need another option, another third-star option, especially a veteran type guy. But as for right now, this team figures to be, in win now mode, because I mentioned that they traded that first round draft pick next year, and so Cat being here and D'Lo being here, they're gonna probably try to push for the playoffs in the Western Conference. Do I think they get there? Probably not. But as long as you have Karl-Anthony Towns on the team, you're not going to be horrible, assuming that he stays healthy. And they also have the aforementioned DAngelo Russell, who was brought in at the deadline for Andrew Wiggins and their first round draft pick next year. And that was a pretty big trade, and it was well known for a while that Minnesota was desperate to get their hands on D'Lo. They tried to sign him in free agency and weren't successful, but they ended up bringing him in a trade anyway, as well as getting off of Andrew Wiggins' contract. And this one, I think it was a pretty solid move for Minnesota, but the thing is now they have no incentive to be bad next year, and so they're going to have to find a way to field a team around their 2 stars pretty quickly, and we have not yet really seen what D'Lo and Cat are going to look like, but I do think it'll work. And so, depending on what they do with their first overall draft pick and the rest of the roster, we could potentially see a Minnesota team that is pushing for the postseason, trying to get into that 7th or 8th spot in the Western Conference playoffs. That's going to be tough, but they're going to want to be in the mix for that, and even for that play-in spot that we now know that there's going to be that play-in tournament. I'm sure that's probably a goal for the T-Wolves, and D'Lo is still only 24, around the same age as Cat, and they are 2 guys who are still young and know how to put up numbers, but like I mentioned before, they don't really know what it takes to win playoff basketball. Cat went to the playoffs that 1 year with Jimmy Butler on the team. D'Lo was in the playoffs with Brooklyn a couple of years ago. But neither of them have really been in super high stakes basketball, and so I think the best thing for Minnesota to do is to find that third option and find a guy who can really teach these two how to win, because surely both of them are talented, but they are going to need a little bit more playoff experience, and right now they don't really have anybody on the roster who has that type of, playoff conditioning and who has been there before and won titles and, even just been past the first round. And so while they are talented, they're going to need a little bit of help in order to push this team over the hump. So let's have a look at the cap sheet, and just right away you can see that they have two pretty significant restricted free agents, both of which were brought in from the Denver Nuggets in one of those big deadline deals. They were wheeling and dealing at the trade deadline this year, basically remade the whole roster around Cat. And so they have Juancho Hernangomez and Malik Beasley both entering restricted free agency. Hernangomez was a guy who came in at the deadline and immediately started. He started for them. All 14 games that he played, he started and averaged around 13 points, which was pretty impressive on his part. He's a guy who didn't really get much playing time in Denver and was able to really show what he can do here in Minnesota. I would anticipate that they're probably intent on bringing him back. He's still only 25 years old, and I think he's a guy who can help you win. And so as long as you don't have to pay too much for him, and I'm not sure how much how strong the market will be for a guy like this, because it might have just been a flash in the pan, but I think he's shown enough for to warrant the Timberwolves throwing him some sort of contract to bring him back, and in restricted free agency I think you can get him on a pretty fair deal. Malik Beasley, I'm not really too sure what's going to happen with him, just because he's having some sort of a legal situation going on right now. I'm really not too sure all of the details on that. I'm not really going to really comment on what's going on legally with Malik Beasley, but I know that that's kind of put him in a little bit of jeopardy to maybe not even be able to continue to play in the NBA next year. We'll have to see how everything goes down with that, but assuming that all of that gets resolved, he is a guy that the Timberwolves should definitely want to bring back just for his abilities on the basketball court. He's only 23 years old, and definitely he showed a lot of what he can do moving into a more full-time role with Minnesota after the trade. And he's definitely a guy who can score, coming off the bench, be a spark plug type of guy. And I do think he has value to this team, especially if you are trying to win immediately. And he is also entering restricted free agency. So if you can bring him back on a fair deal, not sure what the market value will look like for him, especially after his legal situation. And who knows what's going to go on with that. That's still TBD. But if that all gets resolved, Malik Beasley is a guy who you should want to target and bring back. And then beyond that, there's really nobody. James Johnson has a player option. He's going to pick it up. That's a guy who's going to be, in a lot of trade rumors as an expiring contract. That's a perfect, $16 million is a perfect value for an expiring deal to be thrown into, facilitate a trade for another player. You can bring somebody in and get rid of that James Johnson contract to take on some more long-term money if you're looking for a player that can help you win now, because Johnson is an okay guy, but he's a veteran and that's a lot of money for him. And so as an expiring contract, he might be flipped around in some sort of deal. Evan Turner's expiring, they're not going to bring him back. I believe they almost bought him out at the deadline, but I guess it didn't happen. And I mean, the season was suspended and stuff, so he just ended up finishing his season with Minnesota, and that's an expiring deal. They're not going to bring him back. He'll go sign a veteran minimum somewhere else. And that's pretty much it. I guess Jordan McLaughlin, who is on a two-way deal, might get brought up to be a full-time player. But other than that, it's really nothing. They've got a lot of these young guys still on rookie deals. Josh Okogie, Jacob Evans, Amari Spellman. Evans and Spellman were brought in that D'Lo trade, basically just a salary dump from Golden State because they didn't want to pay the repeater tax. And neither of them really played much for Minnesota. I don't believe Spellman played at all. Evans played a little bit. If you feel like you have anything in those two guys, sure. If not, then see if you can get maybe a late round draft pick back for him. Josh Okogie is a guy who should be in their future plans. He's shown a little bit over the course of his career, pretty solid defender, a guy who can hit a couple shots for you. And then Jake Layman has been okay. Jarrett Culver, who was their lottery pick last year, I believe they picked him 6th overall after trading up with the Phoenix Suns, and he had a bit of an up and down rookie year, was a little disappointing, but I still have some belief in Jarrett Culver that he can end up being a solid pro. He's got some of the tools to be a pretty solid defender and shot maker and stuff. So I think don't give up on Jarrett Culver just yet. I wouldn't rush into making a huge win now trade with him. If there's somebody really awesome available, then sure. But if not, just stick it out and see if he can turn into anything, because I think it's still too early to judge him. And then that's pretty much what the roster is looking like. They got D'Lo and Towns on max money, and then that expiring Johnson contract, who I anticipate they will flip, if not at the draft, some point during the season, to get a more win now player, even if they have to give up a future pick or something else to get a better player in there. They can maybe take on long-term money, someone like Aaron Gordon or Miles Turner. Not that either of those are necessarily fits, but that's the type of player you're looking for. And then really that's all, just bringing back those 2 restricted free agents and continuing to round out this team. Like I said, they don't have their first round pick next year, so it's not going to be a tank season for Minnesota. So they're going to try their best to field a competitive team with some pretty limited resources, salary wise and then asset wise as well. So the one thing that they do have that is a very big trade chip is, of course, the first overall pick in this year's draft. And as is custom with everything in the draft and pretty much everything that's going on this offseason, we have no idea what they're going to do with it. Ever since they won the draft lottery, it's been kind of up in the air. Are the Timberwolves going to take Anthony Edwards? Are they going to take LaMelo Ball? Are they going to take James Wiseman? Maybe they'll trade down. And it's looking like it's going to be one of those 4 options. And I can rank, what I feel like are the most likely. The least likely of those 4 is probably Wiseman. They have Cat already. Doesn't feel like he's a fit. Then I would probably say, then after that it really kind of gets muddy, because I think they do want to trade out and potentially get some more win now pieces, but will a deal be there for them? Who wants to move up to get whoever, whether it's trading down to number 3 with Charlotte, or even further with somebody like the Knicks or the Pistons, or even the Celtics want to move up a lot. Any of those teams might have a player that you would like if you're Minnesota. And because of the fact that they don't have a first round pick next season, they are just going to be going, all in for next year and see what they can do. So acquiring a more win now player rather than, a rookie who might take some time to develop might be something that the Timberwolves want to do. For a long time, I thought that they were just going to go with Edwards at 1. It felt like it was the best fit. He can play in the backcourt next to D'Lo, can come in and get you some buckets, has defensive upside, and can potentially become a really, dynamic offensive player that would work with the 2 stars that they have, right? And that seemed like it would be the most likely option. But this week we've had a lot of buzz around maybe they're going to pick LaMelo Ball. He, could also fill a similar role to Edwards. He's probably a little bit more ball dominant, would cut away from D'Lo's touches, but I do think D'Lo can play off ball a little bit, and maybe LaMelo can as well. You can develop that skill in him. He's a pretty solid playmaker, so I don't hate that fit there. I think he could play alongside D'Lo. I do think the better fit is probably Edwards, but either way, I wouldn't be too upset about it. Either of those 2, I feel like are, it's 50-50 at 1 right now, which one of those 2 they take, because I still don't think it's going to be Wiseman. And if they trade down, obviously they're not getting either one of those guys. They're probably getting, a guy in the middle of the lottery, maybe one of those defensive wings that's in the middle of the lottery, or, a secondary ball handler, somebody like a Killian Hayes or a Tyrese Halliburton or whoever, if you're trading down. So what should Minnesota do? I think the best option for them is honestly probably to just stick and take Edwards, in my opinion, right? Because I feel like he's a guy who can play right away. I still think he can impact winning next year, and he can still grow alongside your 2 guys. I wouldn't, mortgage your entire future, trading for a win now player just so you can try to be competitive next year because you don't have a pick. I think they should, try to push for the playoffs around the margins, but you have the first overall pick this year. That's an opportunity to add a really, really nice player to an already young core. Both of their stars are still only 24, 25, so they still have a lot of time left, and whoever they pick this year can grow right alongside the team that they already have. Whether or not that, makes Cat happy, because that's the big question, right? Is Cat going to be happy with whatever they do? Because if not, then he might request out. Developing a rookie is always kind of tricky when you already have stars on the team, but I think you can sell the two guys on, hey, we think this guy can be really awesome. We got you your buddy in here already, and so we feel like this is going to be our best chance to compete within the next couple of seasons. I think that's probably their best choice. So with the first overall, I would probably take Anthony Edwards. LaMelo Ball I don't think is a bad choice, and trading down, into the mid lottery, if you can get a good return on it, I don't necessarily hate that either. So they've got a lot of options here, and I'm certain that we're going to hear a lot more buzz over the weekend. Just so everybody's aware, I am recording this on Thursday evening, Thursday, November 12th, and this video is scheduled to go up on Saturday the 14th, so there might be some stuff that comes out in between now and then, and like I did with the Hornets video yesterday, if anything is significant, I will insert a clip here. I'm leaving a pause. Okay, that's where the clip is going to go if anything, any significant rumors come out over the next day or two. And then I also do want to mention everybody's been trying to trade Devin Booker to them, because we know that there was all those rumors about Devin Booker and Karl-Anthony Towns and D'Lo wanting to play together. It's not happening this offseason. The Suns are keeping Booker. They're just not going to trade him right now. They're going to go all in and make their own playoff push in the Western Conference, especially after that bubble run that they had. We know about the Chris Paul rumors and everything else, but D-Book is there to stay, at least for right now. Maybe in 2 to 3 seasons, if he gets fed up and asks out and all 3 of these contracts are inching closer towards expiration, then maybe that's when we see a move for the 3 of them to play together, or they just link up in free agency in a couple of years. But I don't think it's going to happen on the Timberwolves within the next 2 to 3 seasons. That's something that might happen down the line, not for a couple more years. So don't do a Devin Booker trade. I've seen a lot of Ben Simmons trade. I don't think the Sixers are trading Ben Simmons either, and if they did, it probably wouldn't be to Minnesota. So I just don't see a pathway for them to trade for a star right now, just because there's not a lot of stars, like stars available. You could maybe get a guy like Victor Oladipo or like a Gordon Hayward or whoever else is out there on the market right now that potentially fits into this team. You can get a marginal star that can help you win next year. But as for a true superstar, I just don't see it this offseason for Minnesota. So I think my biggest plan for them right now is just, continue. Let your 2 stars figure out how to play together. Bring back Hernangomez and Beasley, and keep developing Culver. And whoever you draft first overall, whether it's Ball or Edwards, or if you trade down and get somebody else, let them develop naturally within this system and continue to grow, with the 2 stars that you have right now. So that's going to be it for the video on the Minnesota Timberwolves. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. And that was number 29 out of 30. So we only have one more team left to go, and that is my very own Golden State Warriors. So buckle up. Tomorrow's video is going to be crazy. But that's going to be it for me today, and I will see you guys tomorrow.